So today we were rehearsing our extract from Our Country's Good, which I will post a clip of down below. So what we've been doing for the extract, I think, adheres to the Brechtian style, as we made sure to include a lot of elements which were typical of Brecht style of theatre. One such element is showing the characters as constructs instead of realistic characters that the audience can become emotionally attached to and emotionally involved with their stories, which means they cannot judge the theatre objectively, which was Brecht's purpose, Brecht style's purpose. So, for example, my character is a drunk, and we wanted to really emphasise that, as it kind of, he's very representative of the soldiers' greed, and how they look after themselves, and the corruption, how they look after themselves before the prisoners, as the rest of the convicts are starving and he's there drunk. Also, he's a follower, which I want to show because that kind of emphasised that as well, because that kind of shows, again, that kind of corruption as he's following whatever Ross says. We also thought about a technique which Brecht often uses in his theatre, which is gestus, which, so when thinking about that, we thought about the gestures we used and how they would show the type of person the character was, the social roles, what gestures we could use to convey an attitude, and where we could use a gesture to show a social comment. So we used proxemics and gestures to show the social role of a character and the type of character they were, and these gestures, how they reacted to each other. So the governor, who has the most power in this situation, he is sat at the head of the table, because he has the highest social status in this, in the room. He's also in the centre of the table, so there's the two sides, and then he's in the centre, which kind of shows his power to decide whether or not the idea for the theatre that Ralph is trying to present goes through or not. Because on one side, we have the people who are very much against the theatre, very much against putting on the play, and then on the other side we have the people who, Ralph, who's very much for it, and Rev, who kind of seems to be swayed towards it. It doesn't have a very strong view against it, so seems to be swaying towards it. So with the governor in the centre, it shows their power, the power that he has between each side of the argument. So we also have people. Ross likes to stand up when expressing his view, and we also have Collins, who stands up when expressing a strong view, and as they seem to have the strongest point of view in the room, and when each of them have a strong view, they tend to stand up. So even when the Rev stands up and has lots of strong view to say, and that directs the audience's attention to which side the argument is talking, which side the argument is getting across their view, and this means that the views don't get lost, and the audience can be thinking about each side of the argument and what reasons they have. We also have Dawes, who is very much uninvolved in the argument, very much not taking either side, not having a strong view on either side. And Dawes is right off to the side we position them, to show that he is very much uninvolved. Because Dawes doesn't have a strong view. He doesn't mind the play being on as long as he doesn't have to watch it. We also used gestus to show a social comment, where whenever we talked about how the convicts were, how the convicts were starving, how the convicts were being idle and their greed, we would eat from the food and drink from the alcohol that is laying on the table. And this shows this corruption and provides a social comment a social and political comment, as the guards are gorging themselves on all this food and drink when the convicts are starving. And it shows this mistreatment of the convicts, where the guards are treating themselves, gorging on all this great luxurious stuff, and the convicts are starving. And that we really want to emphasise that, to show, or to get the audience thinking about this and really get across that social and political comment. So personal improvement on what we've done, I think I need to act more drunk to really get across that drunken image that represents the greed of the guard, so that really needs to get across so that he is a construct. I also think that I should sit down earlier, as my character doesn't really have a strong point of view. He follows Ross, and that is very apparent when Ross is sat in front of me and I am sat behind him, and it shows my character never goes in front of Ross during the rehearsal. So really need to sit down earlier, just to show that my character does not have a strong point of view. He's very much a follower. Even when Ross leaves, my character follows. Just really showing that. So sitting down earlier. So as this production is very much because we're only doing an extract rather than a full out production. We can't do everything that we would want, as it is just a studio production. So if we were to do a full scale production, the kind of stuff which we would have was, for the staging, we'd have flags up and around to show the staging, and these flags would represent the military, how we would like them to be tattered to represent the corruption of the guards, but also the corruption of Great Britain, who played a massive role in shipping the convicts over and neglecting their human rights and leading to the mistreatment of the convicts. We would also have a table full of food and wine and very luxurious items, which we would eat when we talked about the starving, which gives us a sense of irony and heightens that sense of corruption and really gets across that social and political comment. Something else what we'd have is a placard that would state the location of the guards, gravitation of the situation, and say that a little bit of information about what's about to go on in the scene. For example, that the guards are discussing the merits of theatre. This very much contributes to the V effect, and which helps the distancing of the audience, reminding them that they are watching theatre. They are not watching a reflection of life, which keeps them objective. And this placard is very much a typical thing which Brett does in his theatre. Something else we thought we'd have was chains hanging down from the walls, and this creates it seems like a hostile environment, very dominating and kind of intimidating, and the chains represent the convicts' right to freedom and show how it's gone, and no matter where they are, because the chains are like all over the walls, no matter where they are, their freedom is gone. So when we're discussing what we do for costume, we thought we'd have period dress, which sticks with the historicism which was a typical feature of Brecht's theatre. The guards and soldiers, they would be wearing uniforms, which would be quite smart and look quite smart and neat, and show that they have more status, more money than the convicts. The reverend would be in a typical dress for a reverend. So he would stand out against the soldiers, as he is not part of the military. He is the Reverend of the Island. So the chain, or the Reverend of the colony, sorry. We'd also have chains hanging from the soldiers' belts to represent their control and the way they dominate the convicts and the control they have over the convicts. And that kind of control and lack of freedom is always present throughout this play, we think, because the convicts are very much do not have control over themselves, very much dominated by the guards. For lighting, we thought we'd have harsh white light that illuminates the stage, and that is because harsh white light is very much typical of Brecht's theatre. He thought that it illuminates the truth, and we want to keep that typical lighting for our extract, because the simplistic lighting doesn't overshadow the performance. It doesn't distract the audience from what's going on. The audience can see the action and judge it rather than focusing on overproduction. We also thought that because there is another extract, which two others are doing, that between our scenes, when we go from our scene to theirs, we would all change. We would come out of the scene, change the set, and show the audience this kind of working of the backstage team, changing the scenes from one to another. And this again reminds the audience they are watching theatre, and that this isn't real life. This is very much theatre, not a reflection of real life. So that they can be reminded of this, and really helps with the distance effect, contributes to that V effect which Brecht wanted his audience to have, or wanted his theatre to have, and wanted his audience to be distanced from his theatre, so they could look at it objectively, not have that emotional involvement, and his theatre would inspire change rather than having his audience stop thinking and use it as a break from reality.